Right. So what we discussed in the last session about, we have discussed about the data part. So in context to the data model, at the same time, we discussed about business or logical model, right? So all that part, vendor model, right? So all these things were discussed, enterprise model, all that were discussed.
Yes.
Where in today's session, I'm going to discuss about the data dictionary part, because whenever we are working on the application development, especially from the policy center point of view,
Mm.
it's always important for us to understand the data dictionary part, because whatever the data models we are creating, followed by the kind of data elements what we are going to create, everything will be under the data dictionary only. So hence it's always important for us to understand the data dictionary. Whenever we are working on the data dictionary, it is always important for one to understand about how to open it, because yesterday, if you remember, this is what something which I have explained you, because if you want to open any data dictionary file and all, this is what something which normally we use, like policy center build dictionary data index.html. Because when it comes to the data dictionary, if we want to open the data dictionary, normally belongs to policy center, because we are talking about the policy center part. Policy documents I'm talking about, whatever the policy documents do we have and all. So all these things are comes under this category. This is what generally we call it as policy center, which normally we will be taken into consideration. So apart from the policy center, next building of an application is one of the key and prominent element. Means what are the different policy documents are we creating? Either it can be different insurance policy documents which will be available. It can be motor vehicle insurance, or it can be property insurance, or it can be vehicle insurance, all etc. So how to build the application according to the business rules and government mandates? What are the requirements that are needed to change? Let's say, for example, motor vehicle insurance, where an XYZ is an insurance company providing motor vehicle insurances to the customers in a particular locality. Now they were planning to expand their business to the next level. Assume that. I'm just giving an example to you. Right. So whenever we are expanding this to the next level, what will happen? We require to add some new services to the existing application, whatever are we doing it. Because that services, that particular segment or the area may be geographically different. At the same time, whatever the cost in context to the policy renewal, currency might also be different. For example, if you have taken an insurance premium amount, insurance premium amount, maybe for UK, the value might be different. Maybe for US, their value might be different. Maybe other European country, the currency value might be different. So when we are building up any kind of application, maybe the kind of customizations are we doing in the existing application. So we have to know about how to build the application. In context to that, generally, whatever the required changes that are to be made from, maybe as an example, as I told you, right? So currency value charges will be different when you are calculating the policy renewal premium amount, all that, right? So this is where generally build comes into picture. So policy center is what something we have taken. So apart from the policy center, we have taken even build, right? So how to build the application, or build the application is not from the scratch, I mean to say, means whatever the existing application we have and all, we may require to do some customization in between. This is what something which normally we call it as build and all, everything is all about. So once we are building the application, the next one about the dictionary part. Dictionary means data dictionary. That is what something which normally we will be mentioning. This data dictionary maybe consists of each and every information regarding to the policy renewal premium dates, at the same time sending some auto reminders to the people, right? So sending auto reminders on monthly basis. All these things are comes under the dictionary part. That's where generally the data will be available over here. So for that, if you want to maintain this dictionary and all that, there are some indexation page which normally we will be maintaining. so that in that index, whatever the required information, everything has to be updated over here. This is what generally a data dictionary is all about. Means if you want to manage the data dictionaries, especially for the policy center, this is what generally is what something which we have to use, like policy center / build. Next, dictionary data index.html is what something as a file if we are opening, so that it is easy for us to see whatever the required changes we want to be updated in regular intervals and all, everything can be done. But as in when yesterday I have told you, repeating the same, when it comes to the data dictionary part, sometimes there will be a manual generation as well, because generating of data I'm talking about. Generation of data will be classified into two parts. One is about the manual generation, second is auto generation. Manual generation we are doing on our own, means we are doing on personal, we are doing manually, right? So the data, whatever is required and all, we are selecting the data and we are manually operating it. That's what generally the manual generation is all about. Auto generation means whenever we are working on the application, if there is any kind of changes to be made to the existing ones, that's where generally auto generation come into picture. So manual generation of the data dictionaries when we are working on the application, once there is any kind of installation in context to the Guidewire Policy Center we are maintaining. So whatever the manual generation of data dictionaries, if we want to do, make sure there must be a policy center installation which must be happening. So this is where generally the data models as well as data dictionaries and all, everything will also be worked. Whatever the data models yesterday I have discussed with you, all these data models will be part of the data dictionary what we are maintaining. This is what something which we need to understand from the data dictionary point of view. Now the next one about the policy center data model. Woody.
Yes.
Yeah, please write down this point, right? So write down under policy center data model, write down. Because how policy center data model works, if anybody is asking, what should be your answer? Write down.
Okay.
This data model, I will
Yeah.
tell you shortcut, okay? I don't no need to write all these. I'll tell you shortcut so that it is easy for you
Okay.
to remember and explain.
Okay.
What is policy center data model? I'm explaining now to you. This data model
Yeah.
consists of
Yes.
data objects,
Okay.
data objects which are required to manage
Yeah.
policy center application database. Policy center application
Yeah.
database, comma, continuation. Policy center database, application database, comma, continuation. This data model consists of entities, because yesterday, if you remember, we discussed about those things, right? So entities, fields, fields
Yeah.
such as SUCH, such as policy center entity,
Yeah.
account number,
Yeah.
issue date, and status. These are the things which we have to be updated under the policy center data model. Okay, in the next paragraph, being a business analyst, because in what way being a business analyst we are related. Okay, this must be your next question. For that I am giving an answer here. Okay, being a business analyst, we try to understand a business need. A business need. We, as a business analyst, we try to understand the business need.
Yeah.
That are needed to change.
Yeah.
In the policy center data model, For that,
Okay.
for that, replacing
Yeah.
old XML files with new XML files, replacing with old XML files with new XML files.
Yeah.
XML files, which will be stored.
Yeah.
Which will be stored in the
Yeah.
policy center data model, in the policy center database.
Yeah.
That can be identified.
Yes.
And that can be identified and write this. This is how generally this can be identified.
Okay.
It can be identified under the directory. Under the directory. Under the directory, this one write down. Policy center, modules, configuration, config and extensions. Done writing?
Almost.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, so here is a question, because if anybody is asking you, being a business analyst, in what way you are relating to the policy center data model? If someone is asking you, whatever that you have written so far, you have to explain this to them. Because people
Okay.
will ask you how the policy center data model, being a business analyst, what is that you did? What was your responsibility? What is the work you have done so far, right? So if anybody is asking you, this is what something which you have to explain. If anybody is
Okay.
asking, okay, at the time of interviews or so, etc. Next, if anybody is asking you what kind of directory and how do you open the application and all, this is the URL which you have to mention, right? So because policy center modules, configuration extensions. But what are the steps that are to be followed is what something essentially required. Means you must be knowing about the steps. These are the steps which normally we follow. If you want to do any configuration in the policy center data model, write down. If you want to configure policy center data model, step one. Step one, select configuration. Step two, under the configuration, select config. Second point, step two, config. Step three.
Step two. Oh, wait. Step one, select configuration. Step two.
Step one is configuration.
Yeah.
Step two, config.
Okay.
Step three, extensions.
Okay.
You have to select the extensions.
Okay.
Okay. If you want to configure anything, generally these are the three steps you have to follow. You need to go for configuration. From there, you have to select the config. In that config, you have to select the extensions. So for what purpose this is, if you want to edit any kind of data model and all, these are the steps being a business analyst you have to do. Because in the beginning itself, which I have told you, being a business analyst, we normally will be a part of the configuration, because configuration means we are configuring the application according to the business rules and government mandates of the organization. So in regard to that, this is where generally being a business analyst, we act into the configuration side. So when we are working from the configuration point of view, these are the steps which normally we have to follow: configuration, config extensions. These are the three different steps which we have to be followed, so that editing the data model and all everything is what something which we have to be performed with. This is what something which normally we call it as policy center data model is all about. Understood? Clear? Good.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So now these are the two different data entities you can write down. When it comes to the data entities under this, these two you write down. As far as data entities are concerned, in the next paragraph you can write. As far as the data entities are concerned, there are two different files. There are two different files.
Yeah.
First one, base metadata files. Base metadata files. Second, extension metadata files. Extension metadata files. Okay. Now, if we want to select base metadata files, you have to step one, configuration. Second, config. In that, you have to select the third step called metadata. Means if you want to locate base metadata files, these are the steps we have to follow. One is configuration. First step is configuration. Second step, config. Third step, metadata. Understood?
What do you call, what's the studio?
Sorry, Guidewire Studio.
That's different from the application itself.
Guidewire, normally we call it as Guidewire Studio. That's it. Guidewire application or studio. The both are same. Name itself.
Okay.
Name.
Okay.
Sometimes we call it as Guidewire Studio or sometimes we call it as Guidewire application.
Oh, okay.
Studio means combination of all policy center, billing, claims. Everything is part of studio.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but organizations don't use all the three, right? Sometimes organizations will be using any one, right? So sometimes organization have already a claims application. So what they do, they use only policy center. Sometimes they have only claims. Okay, they will use only claims application. Okay, they have policy center, they want claims, they use only claims. Like that, any one they will be using, any two or three of their choice, normally they use this.
Okay.
This is what something which normally this configuration config metadata is what something which we have to select if you want to select the base metadata files. But when it comes to the extensions metadata files, configuration config extensions is what something which we have to be used. Because if anybody is asking you how you are going to select the data entities, then you have to tell them that base metadata files and extension metadata files we have. If I'm going for base metadata files, configuration config metadata is what something which I'm selecting. If it was extension metadata files, it is configuration config extensions is what something which I am selecting. Understood? Clear? Understood or not?
No. Can you take it again?
Sorry?
Can you take it again?
What I'm saying is, for example, you are working on the policy center. Okay.
Yeah.
When you are working on the policy center, there are a lot of files. Policy document files are there. Okay.
Yes.
So how do you review that file? If you want to review the file, these are the things you have to follow. Means, for example, you want to review the files and you want to do the configuration. Okay. So to do the configuration, first of all, we need to identify what are the different files we have. Okay. Normally, file formats will be of two types. One is base metadata files, and second is extension metadata files. Two types of files are there.
Okay.
If you are selecting base metadata files, then configuration config metadata is what generally which we search it.
Okay.
If it is an extension metadata files, configuration config extension is what something we will be using for identification. Understand?
Okay.
Clear to you?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So this is what generally we call it as metadata files and base metadata files and extension metadata files. Now, when you're talking about metadata file folders and all, now what are the metadata file folders? This is what generally the extension you have to write. If we want to select metadata folders, if we want to select metadata folders, then select configuration, configuration, in that config, in that metadata, in that
I read if we want to select metadata files, then select configuration.
Config, metadata entity. Means identify address location I'm talking about. This is for identification of address location, right down. This is for the identification of address location.
Yes.
Identification of address.
Identification of what? Address.
Address location.
Address location. Okay.
Next. Second point. If we want to identify address extension, extension,
yes,
then this is what something which we have to follow. Configuration, config, metadata entity. Same, the same one. But this is the address where we use ETI here, but here we use ETX. That is the difference. These are the file names, extension names, file extensions.
Oh, so I should write that extension address.
Extension. ETI is address for extension. EIX address extension. This is the step you have to follow. The same steps. But extensions are different. .eti, this is .eax.
Okay, the .eti is for
.eti and .eax. This is the difference. Understood, Rudy? Clear?
Yes.
This is what generally, which normally we do when we are working on the district. Okay. So when we are working on the page configurations and all, this is what something which normally this metadata folders and all everything were generally used. The next, when it comes to the workflow related stuff or metadata extensions in context to the data integrations or data models and all, that I am going to discuss in tomorrow session. I am taking less session today. Tomorrow I will continue. Tomorrow I will take the session. Tomorrow that data model extension will be covered tomorrow. I will explain tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Clear?
Thank you.
Right, Rudy. See you then.